So, like I mentioned yesterday, today we're going to look a little bit into C# within Unity. And what we're going to be making is focusing on your component scale. We're going to import the component geometry, and we're going to animate the winding sequence. Okay, so the first thing the way we're going to do that is basically we're going to export the positions of the winding, the wire polyline, and then we're going to read these positions into Unity and we're going to animate them. So the first step is actually in Grasshopper. Actually, I'm going to send you, I have uploaded here the day 2 resources. If you could download it, that would be great, in the same folder as yesterday in Unity. And the Grasshopper script doesn't do much. It takes the component and the wires geometry, which were over there, and just centering them to 0, 0, 0, because in Unity, it's a good practice to have your objects as close to 0, 0, 0 as possible, because the further away they get, the more things start to be buggy, like the physics can get buggy, visualization can get buggy, etc. So I just moved it over here, and then I have the component, and then I have the wires. And over here for the wires, oh,
Sorry, Elena, are you sharing?
am I not?
No.
Sorry.
No worries. Thank you.
Oh, I leave. You need to enable sharing.
Yeah, go for it. You can share now.
Thank you. Okay, so did you find the resources folder I showed? It's over here, day 2 resources.
Yes.
And then again, then in the script. So it isn't the resources if you want to have a look at it, but it doesn't do much. It's a very simple script. So what I said is I take the component, which is over here, I recenter it over there, and then we have our component, and we have the polylines of the wires. And come on, mouse. Okay. And then what I do is I find the discontinuity for these polylines and I split them. So this is just a bunch of points. I split them so I only take the number part of it. I don't want to have the curly brackets. So I split the text. I'm using this text split. And then I'm taking the item that I want, which is the first one. It's the second one, actually. And I'm getting this one over here. So these are all the points that these polylines have in the corners. And now what I want to do is I want to export this as a CSV. Now the CSV file format, probably you're aware of it, but just for the sake of it, I'm gonna say what it means. It stands for comma separated values. It's very similar to an Excel sheet. And it's one of the easiest data formats to basically read and write because it's just text with commas. So what we're doing is I'm basically attaching a panel, and then I right click over here and I do stream contents. And when you do that, it's gonna ask you for a file, for a location, and you're gonna type the file name. So let's say positions. And over here where it says save as, you're going to select comma separated values, and we're going to save it. And what this does is if we go over here, which is the positions, and I open it, you see I have an Excel sort of with all the positions in X, Y, and Z. And if I actually open this with a text editor, so with a notepad, you see that it's comma separated values, so comma, 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 comma. And it also understands the separate lines. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the grasshopper part. I have also uploaded the CSV that I used, so you don't have to export it. And I guess let's continue from yesterday's project. So if you could open it up. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to create a new scene today. So I'm going to save the one that we had yesterday. And I'm going to go to File, New Scene. And I'm going to save this as well. So I'm going to save as and say that it is inside Scenes. And I'm going to name it Design 1. Component scene. Component scale. Okay. So I have my new scene. Now in the folder that I shared with the resources,
Eliana, can you hang on a minute?
Yes.
Unity is launching.
Yeah, I figured. In the resources, I forgot to put the geometry, didn't I? Ah, damn it. Okay. Maybe I can send it on the chat then. It is right here. Can I share files on chat? We're gonna find out. Yes. Okay, sorry, I forgot to share this on Google Drive. You can find it on the chat and download it. And let me know.
I'm good.
Okay. So just create the new scene and we named our new scene. And the FBX that I just uploaded is basically the component one without the wires. So we're going to go over here in 3D models and we're going to drag and drop it inside. So I had it here, this component FBX. I'm going to just drop it over here. Now, similar to yesterday, I'm going to disable all of these. I don't need them. I want the colliders, and I did some testing yesterday. This has the real life scale, but because the winding pattern is quite dense, and the line rendering that we're going to use is a bit rough, and the lines can't get too thin. We're going to scale this up by 100. So we're going to make this larger. It doesn't matter because we're not going to be doing any walkthrough in this scene, so scale will not actually be visible for the users. So I'm going to scale it by 100 and I'm going to hit apply. And then I'm going to drag and drop it inside. Similar to yesterday, it has all these things that I don't need. So I'm going to unpack the prefab. I'm going to grab this one, which is the only thing that I want, and delete all of the rest. Let's rename it component. And I also don't want it to be rotated. Okay. So here's my component. I'm also going to change the camera so that it can see it. So I'm just going to move it
Diana,
over.
sorry. I have an issue. So when I'm dragging and dropping the component, my sky is rotating by 90. The whole plane is rotating by 90.
The whole plate.
Yeah, my sky just went sideways.
This guy.
Yeah, the background sky.
Wow. I've never seen this happening. Okay. So from your components, did you check and uncheck everything as it is here?
I'm just checking. Okay, no, I missed import cameras. Okay, maybe that's the issue. Okay.
It's a bit weird, but okay. Um,
Yeah, it's back.
okay. Cool. So I'm moving around my Unity camera to just have a better view of this. I'm also going to rotate it a little bit. Now, here's an interesting thing about the transform gizmos. A very handy thing to do is you can either have it, the gizmo as global, or if you click over here, it will turn it to local. So local is basically inherent to the current position that your gizmo, that your object has. So I have the opportunity to move it like that. And then if I just want to, now if I go to the transform one, you see that it's rotated. If I just want to take it up with the global, I do it like that. So it's a neat way of doing that. It gives me a lot of control. So my camera is okay. I'm also going to change it to a solid color instead of skybox. Let's have the light blue light. Something like that. I'm also going to go.
Jeffrey,
I'm also going to go here to lighting and click auto generate so I can see the proper lighting of my model. And I guess we're good to go. Yes. Yeah, we're good to go. So we're going to be creating our own component today. So like I mentioned yesterday, we can create our own components and we can expose some properties. We can write a bit of code and this will attach a behavior to our game object. Now, we're going to, first of all, what our component is going to do is going to be reading the CSV file that we created. So let's first bring the CSV inside as well. So we're going to go over here to assets, and we have to create a folder that's called streaming assets. Now this naming needs to be exactly as I type it because it's a special kind of folder that Unity can read easily from code, and it's case sensitive. So create folder, it's streaming assets with as one word with capital S, capital A, streaming assets like that. Like that. So inside this folder, we're going to drag and drop the CSV, which is this one, wire positions, and we have it in Unity.
Sorry, could you please send again the file because I was disconnected and it's not in the chat right now for me.
The file, you can find it into day 2 resources, or are you talking about the geometry?
I'm talking about the geometry that you sent before on chat.
Yes, of course. Okay. No problem. Okay, so now we have our CSV, and it's finally time to write our script. We can either attach it to over here on the component, or we can use an empty game object and have our script over there. It's a very common concept of seeing game managers, that's how they're called, And it's basically scripts that, it's components that don't necessarily affect the game object they're attached to, but they create some behavior globally for the whole game. So we're going to create an empty game object, and we're going to rename it to component manager. Component manager. I'm going to take it to 0, 0, 0 just to be sure. And as you can see, I don't know if you notice it, but this is Unity's axis system. So this is X, Y, and Z. And instead of our component being over here, it's actually over here. So when we read the coordinates from the CSV, we're going to actually have to use -x and -y to make it go over there. So to make it come over here. And you're going to see what I mean. Okay, so let's create then our first component. I'm going to go over here in scripts, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to create C# script, and let's name it winding animator. No gaps in this naming because this is actually a class. You're going to see what I'm talking about. So we don't leave gaps in this name. Winding animator. And in order to edit it, to open it up and write code, we either double click or right click. Not right click, double click. And different editor. Let me change. And actually you can check this as well. If we go to edit, preferences, and then external tools, your external script editor should be set to Visual Studio, not open by file extension. So let's do that. Okay, so now if I edit my script, it's gonna start Visual Studio.
How can I change the Video Studio installer? I mean, I have a Video Studio installer in my external script editor because I tried to, I downloaded the the Visual Studio before and downloaded Unity, and it didn't automatically position itself as an external script editor.
Okay, so over here, sorry, over here. Again, you go to File, Preferences, and External Tools, and you don't see it over here.
Yes.
Yes, you don't see it.
I don't see it. I looked for it in the browser and found the Visual Studio installer, but
Yeah, but the Visual Studio installer means that it's not installed. It means that
I installed it, but I don't know where is the actual file that I need to.
okay. Where's Visual Studio? It should be somewhere in this PC. Not here. Not here. Let's check. No. Does anyone know where Visual Studio is by any chance?
It is program files, Microsoft, but depending on the 64-bit or yeah, if you go to program file 86, Microsoft.
Not here.
Where is it then?
Microsoft Visual Studio. Here it is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
2019 community. And then?
Wait a second. Common.
Sorry about that.
IDE. Should be here.
Yeah. Is it this one? It says application, but that's not the name. But anyway, Ori, if you didn't download Visual Studio with Unity, there is actually something that you need to check that it has enabled. So if you go to Visual Studio, the installer, so when you fire this up, if you go to update, oh no, that's not what I meant. Come on. Cancel. Interesting. Doesn't let me modify. You need to make sure that you have this enabled. So if you just download Visual Studio before, it will not be on. So in Unity, you're not going to have all these autocompletes and the libraries that it has by default.
Great.
So can you do that?
To do it. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Cool. Okay. So our script is over here, Winding Animator. And as you can see, it already has this structure and it already gives us some information about what's going on. So first of all, you can see that our script is a class already. We can see that it inherits from the monobehavior class. That's what this symbol means. And inheritance is basically it's usually when you have a big general class and then you want to create other classes that share the characteristics that this one has, but they also have some additional ones. And instead of rewriting these basic characteristics, they inherit them from this class. So in Unity, all game objects inherit from the monobehavior class. And this is the base class of Unity. So by default, it is what you see when you create a new script. And all of the objects that inherit from this class, they always have these two methods, void start and void update. So start is called before the first frame of date. This means that start is called once when the game begins. And then update is executing in a loop for as long as you have the game on. So as long as the play button is pressed. Is that clear? Okay. And then over here on the top, you have some using system collections, using blah, blah, blah. So basically here we include some libraries that we want to read from. And for today, actually, we're going to add a using library. So we're going to say using system IO. So this one is going to enable us to actually read and write files. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do in this script is we want to create our public variables. So we're going to come over here and we're going to create, first of all, a public string that we're going to name it file name. We're going to create a public integer public int. We're going to name it position count. I'm going to say what all of these are. We're going to create a public float that we're going to name it wind speed. So it's how fast our animation is going to be going. We're going to have another public float that we're going to name scale multiplier. And finally, we're going to have a public game object that we're going to name it mover object. And a public, we're going to need an array of vectors. In Unity, vectors are vector3. This is the class, vector3. An array, if you remember, it's signified like that. And we're going to name it curve positions. Curve positions. So the file name is the name of the CSV file. The position count is the number of points we're going to be reading from the CSV. The wind speed is how fast we're going to be doing the animation. And the scale multiplier, if you remember, we scaled our geometry by 100, so we're going to have to scale the coordinates similarly. The mover game object is going to be basically sort of the end effector, if you want, of your robot. So it's going to be the one leading the winding. And the list of vector 3s is the actual coordinates that we're going to read from the CSV file. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Should I give it a minute?
Elena, I have a small doubt. I don't know if this is relevant, but the game object and vector3 in your file has turned green, but it hasn't in mine.
Huh. So, did you download Visual Studio with Unity?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. And it is on the external tools. These ones we did before. Preferences, external tools. It is like that and not this one.
Okay, no, it's not. So I couldn't find the Visual Studio 2019. Okay, I'll do that. I'll do that. I got it.
Okay. Okay. So are we good with this one? Should I move on? There aren't any no's, so I'm going to take that as a yes. Okay, so if we save this file, we can save it by clicking over here, save all, or Control S, and go back to Unity. And let's add this component to our game object. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to say I want to add the winding animator. And you see that already these variables are actually appearing here as these fields that we can input information. This happens because we use the keyword public. So you remember from C#, we briefly touched on this. So when we have public in front of anything, it means that it's accessible from all the areas in your project. Whereas if it is private or nothing, because nothing, if you don't put anything, it's by default private, you can't access it from anywhere, but only within the context of a class. So because we made this public, that means that they're accessible from any other class, and they're also accessible in the inspector. So that's why we're able to see them over here. So the next step is we're going to create the CSV reading method. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to create a new method, and I'm going to name this public void read CSV. And the first thing that we want to read in order to read the CSV file is we need to provide a path so that we can point the computer, the program to read from there. And first we have to construct this path. So we're going to say string path equals file, which, as you can see, it's a class and it belongs to the system IO. So that's why we included this library. So file dot, we're going to access the method that's called read all lines, right? Yes, read all lines. And if I open the parentheses, you see it tells me that it requires a string that is a path. Sorry, this is not what I wanted. My bad. We're going to do this in a minute. We want to construct the path. So we're going to have to come here and do path. This one, path combine. Open parentheses. And this requires different chunks of strings so that it can combine them with the, how's it called? Slash to create the file path. So the first bit of our path is the streaming assets. And the reason I had you place it there is because we can access this part of the directory as easily as typing application dot streaming assets path. And actually, let's see what this gives us. So I'm going to print this. Let's do the print. In Unity, you can either do print or you can do debug dot log, and inside here you put the string. So let's print the path. Remember, in order for this method to be executed, it has to be either in the start or in the update. So let's put it in the start for now. Read CSV. And let's see what happens. So I'm going to save so that this will be updated in Unity. Control-S, and I'm going back. And I'm going to open my console over here. And I'm going to fire play. So you see, it automatically accesses this path. Users, my name, documents, data Unity, Unity session 1, assets, streaming assets. It already got that part of the directory. Is that clear? I'm gonna hope that it is. I'm stopping it. Remember, don't do anything while it's playing. And now we want to combine this, but we also want to create the second part, which is the name and the ending of the CSV. So we're gonna do comma, and we're going to add the file name, which we're going to give it from outside, plus, this is a way to concatenate strings, open these double quotes, dot CSV. So let's see what happens if I print that. Control S. I'm gonna go back to Unity, and I want to make sure that I give it a file name. So just to avoid any errors, I'm gonna go over here to my streaming assets. If you click, wait a bit and then click again, it will take it to edit mode. Control C, placing it over here, wire positions. And if I play it now, you see that it has this wire positions.csv. So this is the path that I'm going to read my CSV file from. This is basically opening the CSV. It will open the CSV for me. All clear? Cool. Okay, so I'm going to comment this out because we don't need it. Okay, and now we're going to read the CSV. So when we read the CSV, we're going to use the method that I accidentally showed you before. It's going to be called read all lines. So what this is going to give us is an array of strings, which is the different lines of my CSV file. We can use an array variable to store that, or we can just use var, which is generic variable that you don't have to define the type. So we're going to say var lines equals to file read all lines, and now we're going to give it the path. So I'm going to give our path over here. This is going to read all the lines, and then we want to first of all we want to fill the position count over here. So the position count would be how many lines I'm reading. So let's do position count equals lines dot length. It's a length because it's an array, and not count because it's not giving me back a list. Okay. So if I go here and I go outside, I'm saving, go to Unity and click play. Automatically, I see that I'm reading 224 positions. I'm gonna stop this and go back to Unity. The next step is I want to remember that we created here an array of vectors, which is going to store the coordinates that we're going to read, but we haven't initialized it. And as you remember, for the array, we need to give it a specific length of, basically, we need to define what is its length. So we're going to say curve positions equals new vector 3. And now we know the size of this array is equal to the position count. So we're going to say position count. Initialize this array. And now what we're going to do is, okay, we have this whole line, but if I go to my CSV, let's open this one. So I'm getting this whole line, which is going to be, actually, let's open it like that. So I'm getting this line, but this is still not enough. I need to split this where it has comma and extract the number part of it. So the way to do that is we're going to iterate through all of the lines and we're going to split them at the commas. So to iterate, we're using our beloved for loop. We're going to say for int I equals 0, I smaller than the curve, sorry, the position count, I plus plus. And now let's extract the current line. So we're going to say string current line equals lines I. And now we want to split it. So to split it, we're going to again use another var because it is going to give me again an array of strings. So we're going to say var line elements equals string current line dot split, and we're going to have to give a separator, and we're going to put this in the single quotation marks at the comma. And for that, now what we're going to get is we're going to get 3 different strings, which are going to be our 3 different numbers. So this array is going to have 3 elements inside, and we want to convert these strings into floats. So the way to do that is we're grabbing the first one, we're going to say float x equals. Now if I do line elements 0, which is the first element, you see it's underlined and it tells me cannot implicitly convert type string to float because this is a string. So I want to convert it to a float. And the way to do that is we can go to float.parse, open and close parentheses. So what this is going to do, is it's basically going to convert this string. It's going to try to convert this string into a float. Okay, and let's do the same for the other 2. So we're going to do float z. Remember that Unity has the y and the z inverted. So the y is looking up. So the z is going to be actually our second coordinate over here. Is float dot parse line elements 1 and float y equals parse line elements 2. So these are our three numbers. Remember, we multiplied our scale, so that means it would be equal to going into Rhino and multiplying the whole thing by 100. So that means that these positions would also need to be multiplied by the same. So we're going to come over here and we're going to say scale multiplier times. And I'm going to do the same for all. Scale multiplier. And the same for this one. And remember when I told you that we have to do minus x and minus z to put our lines also in the same position that our component is in Unity. So I'm going to do that minus and minus. So these are our red numbers. Let's put them in a vector 3. So we're going to say vector 3 pos equals new vector 3 x, y, z. And finally, we want to add this position to the curve positions array. So we're going to say curve positions I equals what? Is this all clear?
Yes. What does the var keyword do?
The var keyword is a generic variable that you don't have to define what it is, but you also can't have it initialized. So you can't say var, I don't know, distance and do like that. It's not going to let you. It requires to have to make it equal to something, because it's going to try to extract from what you're making it equal what type it is.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Also, where do I see if there are errors in my code? Like in Grasshopper, we could compile it or run it and it would show us errors. Is
Yeah,
there
it
something?
will show over here. So if you do Control S and you have errors, so let me leave an error. Come on, not one by one. Okay, so if I save this now and go to Unity, over here in the console, it's going to tell me, blah, blah, you have this error. And if I double click on the error, it's going to take me exactly to the line where it has detected it.
Okay.
And also, Unity is not going to let me play with errors. So it's going to say all compiler errors have to be fixed so that it can play.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
No problem. Okay, so saving this and going back to Unity, we need a scale multiplier. So let's add 100. This is what we added. And let's hit play to see if it reads the positions. Play. Go over here and open this array. You see that it has read my coordinates as x, y, and z. All good? It's working for everyone? Errors?
Can I see the code for a second?
Yes, please.
Just
Sorry.
one. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So next thing that we want to do, basically what we're going to use to animate our winding curve is we are going to use a method of the vector3. Let me actually open this for you. So basically, if you ever have any doubts, you should go to Unity documentation and Unity forums. They have everything. We're going to be using this method, vector3 move towards. And you see what it does is it calculates a position between the points specified by the current and the target, and it's moving no farther than the distance specified by the max distance delta. So that's basically taking a current position and a target position, and it's slowly moving from one to the other until it reaches the target. So the method that we're going to be using today to animate our curve is we're going to be passing the points in pairs, and we're going to use the first one as current and the second one as target, and it's going to be animating from segment to segment until it reaches the end. So first we need to create, I'm going to create over here three, I think. Yes, 3 more variables. We don't have to make them public because I don't care about seeing them in the inspector. I just need them for this class. So we can say private vector3. And let's name this mover. So this is the one that's going to be the current, if you want. And then I want to have another private vector3. I'm going to name it target. And finally, I want a private integer, and I want to name it index, target index. Target index. And the first thing that we want to do is, I said we're going to use this method of inputting our points in pairs. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to initialize and give the first pair in the start when the game begins. So I'm going to do another method, and I'm going to name it private void init trail. And this is not going to do much. It's just going to make sure that after I have initialized, after I have read my CSV and I have my curve positions, it's going to take the mover and make it equal to curve positions, the first element, and the target is going to be curve positions, second element, and the target index is going to be equal to 1 because this is the index in the array that my target has. Okay. So this initialize my mover and target elements. So I'm just going to call this method right after I have read my CSV. So let's do init trail. And let's see what's the next step. Okay, so now we want to make sure that we swap the pairs when the target is reached. We want to make sure that we move to the next pair, and then when it reaches that, then move to the next pair, etc. So we're going to create a new method for that. I'm going to name it private void step checker. And inside here, I'm going to pass the mover and the target objects and the target index as references. So you already saw that with Milad. We're going to say ref vector3 mover ref vector3 target and ref int, let's name it t index. And also I want to pass the array of curve points. So vector3 C positions. Let's open and close curly brackets. So what we're going to do, is it all good, or am I going too fast?
All good.
Okay. So what we're going to do here is basically we're going to check if the distance between the mover and the target is smaller than a threshold, like a very small threshold. And if it is smaller, then we're going to swap them, and we're going to place target as a mover, and for the target, we're going to grab the next one from this position. So we're going to say, to test the position, the distance, sorry, vector3 class has a method for distance. So we're going to say if vector3 dot distance, and you see that it requires a vector A and a vector B. So we're going to say target, sorry, not this target, this one, the one we're passing, target dot, sorry, not dot, comma, mover. If this is smaller than something quite small, so let's say 0.01 f. So whenever you're typing floats in Unity, you need to add f in the end so that it can know it's a float and not a double. So it has this type specific thing, typing specific. So if this distance is smaller than this small threshold, then I want you to make the target equal to the mover. Sorry, the mover equal to the target. This is our new mover, equal to the target, and the target is actually going to be the next one in the curve positions. So it's going to be C positions, target index, come on, T index +1. And also we want to make sure that in every time we add one, we increase the target index so that it holds the current number. So we want to say T index ++. Does that make sense? Yes, I hope so.
Guys, are you following?
Yeah. Okay, so then finally, what we're going to do is we're going to call this great move towards method. So let's enclose this in another method, and let's name it private void update trail. I really don't want to type trail correctly today. Okay. So what this is going to do, remember, this method is going to be called inside the update. So that means that it's going to be looping all the time. And we want to move basically the mover towards the target vector. So we're going to say mover dot move towards. What is my mistake? Sorry. Mover equals vector3 dot move towards. And it requires this, the current is the mover, and it's moving towards the target. And the max distance delta is actually going to be the speed, the wind speed that we added from outside. But we want to make sure that, and obviously after we move, we're going to call this step checker to know when it's time to switch pairs. But remember that because we're doing T index +1, we want to make sure that we only call this if we're just before the last item in our array. Otherwise, we're going to get an index out of range. So we're gonna say if target index is smaller than the position count -1, then I want you to call the step checker, and I'm going to pass with a reference, the mover, the target, sorry, my mistake, all typos here. So again, mover target, target index, and the curve positions. And we're good. So all we have to do is we're going to call this method inside the update. So update trail over here. I'm just gonna leave it there for a little bit. Does it make sense? I guess.
I'm catching up with things in the group.
Okay, so one last thing, just so that we can see an object moving. For now, we're going to use this method that's called onDrawGizmos. So if I start typing, Unity will automatically bring it up for me. onDrawGizmos is basically called all the time, even when the game is not playing. So we just want to make sure that it's only active when the game is playing. So we're going to say if application is playing equals false, I want you to return. That means I don't want you to execute whatever code is below. Otherwise, I want you to draw a gizmo. So we're going to say gizmos draw sphere. And we're going to need to make it in the mover position. So mover, you see it requires a vector 3 and a radius. So the position is going to be the mover, and the radius, let's make it 0. I don't know, 1f. So this little snippet, it just allows us to draw like a gizmo object wherever this vector 3 is. Okay. So I'm going to save. I'm going to go back to Unity. And over here in my animator script, now I need to fill also the wind speed, just to let you know. I think in my test yesterday, I had a wind speed of 1, which was fast enough. So I'm going to take this 1. And we don't need this yet. We haven't done anything. So if I run this, I'm seeing nothing. No, I'm seeing the thing. It's just a very small gizmo. So let's go back here. Sorry, here. And let's make this maybe 1 so we can see it. So over here, the gizmos are by default only visible. They're basically test elements. So it's like this gizmo. It's a gizmo. But we can't see them in the game mode as well if we click over here where it says gizmos. So now we're going to be able to see the gizmos here as well. And if I play this, come on, chat. We're basically seeing this completing the wind pattern. Maybe it's a bit too fast. So here it is. Obviously, it's not drawing a line yet. We're yet to complete this step. Is it working for you? Should I bring up the code again? Should I move on?
Yeah, you can. It's not working though. There's an issue, but I guess I'll fix it later.
Okay. So what we want to do now is obviously we drew the path, but we created the path of the effector, if you'd like, but we don't have any sequence, but we're not seeing any lines. And in order to do that, we're going to use another object, another aspect of Unity, and it's called trail renderer. So trail renderer. Trail renderer, let's see what it does. So the trail renderer renders a trail of polygons behind a moving game object. So what we're going to be creating is we're going to create a game object and we're going to assign its position all the time to be at the end effector. And this component, it's going to create a trail behind this movement. So let's come over here and I'm going to create an empty game object. We're going to have this game object as a prefab, and then we're going to assign this prefab over here in the mover object. And the reason we want this as a prefab is because we wanted to already have the line renderer component attached, and we're going to have all the little fields of line renderer processed to our needs. So I'm going to create a new game object. It's going to be empty. And I'm going to name it trail renderer. Why not? And this component is going to have, sorry, this game object is going to have the trail renderer component, trail renderer. And you can see over here that the trail renderer actually has a bunch of things. Let's make the width. So this is the width of the renderer. Unity gives you the opportunity to have it. You see, this is a curve graph. So it's very similar to Graph Mapper and Grasshopper. And if you'd like, you can create a curve and then the trail can be thicker in the beginning and thinner at the end. This is to create numerous effects. But for now, we want it as a flat line because we actually want our trail to have the same thickness throughout. And we're going to make it something small. As I move this, it gives me in the first coordinate, the X, and in the second, the Y. So let's make it 0.2, maybe, we'll see. Over here is the time. Now the trail renderer by default, it is not permanent. It will fade after some time. So in order to have this stay for a while, what I did is I added a big number for time. So we're going to say 5,000. What else? It requires a material. So we can use one of the predefined materials of Unity. I can go over here and I can go to this default over here. It says default line material. So I'm just going to use that. And then we can give it a color over here. And the color is actually a gradient, which is going to be spread out across the line. You can either have it as one full color, or you can use a gradient. This gradient editor of Unity is not very handy, but in order to create a color, you click the bottom arrow and you go over here in the color and you have this color wheel and you select what it looks like. Let's make it pink. And then I can go over here. I'm gonna make this maybe, I don't know, yellow. And if you want to add another color, you need to click the bottom side close to the line. And this is how you add colors. And if you want to take them out, you just click on it and drag it outside. So it disappears. So let's say that this is my color. I have this because these are other pieces that I have saved. Probably you don't have anything here. Don't worry about that. If you want to save something, you click over here in the new and it automatically gets saved so you can use it again in your projects. So this is my trail renderer. Let me check if there's something else that we need to do. No, it looks all right. So let's go ahead and make this game object a prefab. Remember how we created the prefabs yesterday? We have our folder already, and we're going to drag and drop this inside here. And then we can delete it from the scene because we don't want it. We're going to procedurally instantiate it through the script. So remember over here, it had an input for the mover object. We're going to drag and drop the trail renderer inside here. Or we could have done that, clicking and bringing this. And back to our script. What we want to do is we want, when the game begins, so over here in start, I want to instantiate a new game object that's going to be the trail renderer, and I want to place it at the first position of my winding curve. So to create a game object, we're going to say that the mover object, yes, we're going to say that the mover object, actually, let's create also another private variable and private game object. Actually, no. We're just going to say that the mover object is instantiate the mover object that we're giving it. So this is basically going to have this as a game object, and it's going to create an instance of that. And then we want to make sure that we place it into the first position of the trail. So we're going to say that the mover object dot transform dot position, I'm going to explain this, is equal to mover. So when we're doing that, I'm going to comment it out and just leave it at that. And let's go to Unity. So just create the object. Coming over here, if I click play, you see that it created a clone of the trail renderer over here. It's just a game object. And if I want to assign its position, let me pause this. I'm going to have to access its transform component, and then from the transform component, access the position. So this is what I did over there. So creating the game object and then grabbing the game object, accessing the transform component and accessing the position vector3 and saying that this is equal to the mover. So I'm doing this once inside the inside start, and I also want to do this in update because I want to consistently be updating the trail. So I'm going to go here and assign the position to the mover all the time. And I'm going to save this and going back to Unity. Let's see what will happen. Starts drawing my line. I don't know if it's kind of thick. Let's make the line thinner. Let me check what settings I had in my example. So it was 0.05. Okay. So I'm going over here inside the prefab. I can double click on it and it will take me inside. And we want to assign this to 0.05. To do that, I can right click and do edit key. And time is the X, value is the Y. And let's make the value 0.05. And let's see, going back outside, let's see how it looks. Yeah, I think that's better. It might be a bit fast. Remember, we can adjust the speed from over here. So it's going a bit slower. You can decide. And it's going to keep doing that. We can also disable the gizmo now. We don't have to see it here. And let's stop this. And the last thing that I want to do is I want to add the camera script over here. I upload this in the resources. So where are they? Come on, over here. So it's this orbit camera. Let me download it as well. So coming over here to my scripts, I can go to, oh, here it is, orbit camera. So I'm going to drag and drop it inside. And I can come here to my main camera and I can add this component. So I'm going to add the orbit camera. You see it has some 4 values. They affect the sensitivity that it has to the zoom, pan, and turn orbit. I think I'm going to place them to 2. And let's see. So now with this script in place, I can also zoom, pan, etc. Maybe that I need that for. And I can navigate around. You need to play with the sensitivity to figure out the ones that work best for your needs. For example, my pan is almost not working. Yeah. So, any questions? Any problems?
I have, but it's in really beginning. Like I cannot read the file, like CSV file in my Windy animator. But
okay, I forgot to mention that if you have the file open in the Excel, it cannot read it. Do you have it open?
Let me check. I don't think so. I close it.
Okay, so what is the
And
error?
I don't have Excel in my computer. Is that also the problem?
No, it's not a problem.
Okay.
So what does the error say?
Let me see. Wait a minute. The error is a bunch of error. The error for CSV is saying the file is not found. Inspection could not found the file.
Okay. Can I see the screen maybe? Or is it not?
I have to share. I have to change my another computer view. So I guess maybe I will.
The things to test is, have you given the correct name? So over here in the component manager, is this name, the one name you gave, exactly the same as the CSV name? over here. So that's one thing to test. The second thing is the streaming assets folder correct? So is this exactly typed exactly the same as it is in mine? And yeah, it should be, you should be writing it. You should be getting it. You can do this step by step. So when we get these kind of bugs, you know, you can first check that is the application streaming assets path, is it returning back what it should be? You can then return the path and see, is like we did, like, is the path what I expect it to be? And if it is, then it should be reading it.
All right, I will check it. Thank you.
No problem.
Elena, I have a question, please.
Yes.
For us, we have a sequence with regards to our winding. So is there a way we can reflect that?
What do you mean a sequence?
So I don't know if you remember our component, but we kind of like we have a sequence with regards to the robotic fabrication. So I was wondering if, because now it's just going randomly for you, right? Is there a way we...
It's not going randomly. It's going to the point that you export. It all starts from Grasshopper, basically. If you have a sequence, you want to construct these coordinates to follow that sequence. So if you know I'm connecting this with that, and then that, and then that, that's
okay. So we order that. Okay, perfect. Okay, okay.
And then
we'll have
it's
to
all
order.
depending on the CSV.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
It's also about the beginning setup of the script and the component. So I'm just repeating, like there is we create a new component, empty component, and we call it a component manager. And then we have, we drag, we call the, we add another component in the inspector, and we name it the same name of the file that we dragged into the assets, right?
Which file?
A new C# script that we call winding animation.
Yes. So we add this component. We search for it. So we're search for the winding animation. Yes.
And we made this file from scratch, like we. And then double-clicking it opens the Visual Studio, and we can create our code. And in order to execute this code back into Unity, we have to play it, or should we just save it?
You have to play. So they're basically the mono behavior scripts, the default scripts that you create in Unity, they're all executed in play mode. So that means that they're going to run when you hit play. There are different categories of scripts.
I meant the play in Visual Studio, sorry.
No, you don't hit play in Visual Studio. You just save and you hit play in Unity. You're not doing anything from Visual Studio.
Because right now I have the script in the Visual Studio and it is saved, but in the component...
It's saved, you said?
This script is saved in Visual Studio, and when I go back to Unity, I don't see the parameters, position count, wind speed, scale multiplier. I don't see it, and I have some errors.
So if you're having errors, sometimes when you have errors, it will, not sometimes, all times, it will not update whatever changes you made because it's blocked by the errors. So if you have them very early in your first save, it's probably not going to show you these parameters, even if when they are public.
Yes.
So you need to fix the errors, and then it should save and update everything over here.
Okay. So usually when there are errors, it asks whether I would like to use the last build, right? If I had a working script and I change something and I get errors, then it will use the last one that was working.
No, if you've saved and you have errors, it will not use the last working one. It will just ask you to fix the errors, and it will not work until you fix them at all.
Okay. So I need to fix it. Thank you.
So we have a bit more time, but I don't want to get started on the next thing because it's a bit wild and I don't want to cut it in half for the next session. So basically the next thing we're going to look at is the user interface. So how to create, buttons and toggles and text so that we can make this look more like an app and less like a render, I guess. Anything else that you'd like to ask? I guess not.
Guys, if you have a question, that is the right time to ask,
So no questions.
I have errors, as I mentioned, and I don't know how to solve them, so it doesn't work right now. But I will just continue looking at what's at the next steps that follow.
Okay.
I don't want to stall for every error I have personally.
Anyone else?
So either you understood everything,
Yeah.
or you weren't paying attention. I thought this was going to be a bit rough for you today, but I guess it's not.
I have a few errors as well, but it's a similar situation where I just need to go back and look through what was being done once more.
Okay.
So yeah, so nothing specific really.
Maybe it would be good if to share like the script.
File. Yeah, sure. I can upload the Unity file as well that has everything working.
Like we did in the combined work.
Okay. Good, then that's it from me for today.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess what would be good is if you guys have questions, which we think you should, honestly. You should collate them, and when we get back together with Eliana on Monday morning, you can ask them, yeah?
Yeah, or you can email me if it's a pressing matter.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so one thing, tomorrow morning, we have a session with Lorenzo at 9 a.m., not at 8, but at 9 a.m., okay? And he's going to do a short session. It's not going to take too long, around 45 minutes, an hour, on how to report your structural analyses because we have been observing that there are some mistakes in the way you document your analysis. So he's going to talk about that a little bit more in detail, okay? And for the rest of the day, we'll be online on Teams as usual. So if there's anything, just text us on Teams, and we can either arrange a meeting if there are any questions, or we'll answer. Yeah. Anything else, guys? Everyone is so silent today. What's happening?
How's the fabrication process going?
We've sent our files to Amel last night. We'll get in touch with him today and get started on some kind of fabrication. It's working for now, so that's good.
Okay.
We have
Our
some
group is
videos to share with you. We have some failed videos to share with you. We had some failures yesterday.
That's good. It's good to
Hey,
have
the
failed.
video.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's good.
Cool.
Do you want to see it too?
You put it up in the
Sure.
channel so everyone can see is it a prototyping, like physical tests? Ah, pretty cool. Yeah, put it up
Cool.
there. Everyone can
Yeah, exactly. Put it on the files and we can see.
Yeah, you can share.
Okay. Yes.
Our group is going to laser cut the frames and things tomorrow. We
Okay.
had a chat with Anil yesterday. He just looked over our files just to see if there are any issues with CNC and some things being too small or too big or anything like that. And he's kind of given an okay. So toolpath and CNC are ready, and we're just putting some instructions together. So yeah, we would do it today, but the DPL is not working today.
Yes, that's true. It's not working today, but next week, hopefully, they will be open every day, by the way. Yeah, but we'll get back to you on that. We just need to double check, basically. Okay. Any other updates? Anything else?
I guess for our groups, George already shared some images. He
Yes.
Finished 3D printing all the jigs, and he drilled all of the pins. So hopefully we'll be ready to start winding tomorrow.
Right.
Okay, that's cool. Good. Okay. So yeah, as you guys know, we are focusing now on, we are in production mode, basically, fabricating, and also focusing on how you are going to demonstrate your research in Unity, and which we will be seeing next Friday in the final jury. Yeah.
So for the final jury, whatever we do in Unity as an application is what we present, right? And things like Karamba analysis and all, would we have to keep switching between like a PPT and the application?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think we have enough time to upload, like create the interface for all of the information. It's going to become a little more complicated. Also, some of you might have done stuff that others don't have at all.
Yeah.
So we're just going to focus on creating like a few simple things that are global for everyone, like component scale, then the assembly sequence, potentially the Wallacy if you have generations. And yeah, I guess you can show this as one thing, and then you can continue with anything else in the presentation mode if you want to explain further. Also, if I don't know, you become very ambitious and you want to add something in Unity that we haven't showed, feel free to ask me. But I understand it's a lot of work at this point for you doing everything, so we didn't want to press you too hard. The idea is for you to get started and then start using it more and more as we go along.
Yeah, we will be using it in term 2 as well. We will be building on this. So.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Well then, I guess that's it for now. Milad, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think everything is quite
Clear.
ready, and yeah, let's do it. Reach out to us if there is any question.
Yes, we are online all day long, so just you can reach out to us. All right, cool.
I have one question. This is regarding, is